Hey everybody, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I haven't been on YouTube with a craft video for about 6 months. I just haven't had any time for crafting. So I'm back here to share with you a super quick and easy last minute Christmas card video. And I'm using these Lawn Fawn Fundamentals, Manatee, Hippo, and Storm Cloud, and this awesome Altenew Bells and Bows stamp and die set. I'm just sharing how I go about layering on these stamps. So the first layer of stamping I just did off camera, and I'm trying to show how I line up the second set that has a little bit more detail, a little less coverage of these bows and this bell. So the first layer I did with the lightest gray color Manatee, and this second set I'm showing how I just test out the placement with a piece of plastic. And you saw that I put in that piece of plastic. Now I'm wiping off this big bow, and I'm going to reposition it because it wasn't lined up quite right. And that's the beauty of testing it out first on a piece of plastic. Now my magnets are moving around as I'm lifting off the stamp, but here I'm going to test it out one more time. And you can see that this second time, all the stamps are lined up pretty well over the first layer of inking. So the second layer I'm stamping on with Hippo, which is a mid-tone, and it lined up really well. I'm flipping this cardstock and I'm gonna ink this up again. I'm doing like 6 different cards with this stamp set. And I'm going to go from beginning to end to show how I do it. But I wanted to share how I go about lining up these layering stamps without ruining a whole bunch of cardstock. And I've always had a hard time. My vision's not perfect. So trying to get this lined up without that plastic, I've wasted a lot of cardstock. And I wanted to show this is the third layer. You can see I've laid down a piece of plastic, and the plastic's really easy to wipe off too. So no, wastage there either. And it's actually the plastic on the back side of these stamps. So it fits perfectly. And I'm trying to line this up. And this is with the third darkest color. This is Storm Cloud. And I think it lined up pretty well. So I'm just gonna, oh no, actually it didn't. Realigning this, the largest bow, I think, and the bell again, because it didn't line up quite right. One thing you have to be careful of is the shifting of that little plastic sheet. But there, I think that time it did line up pretty well. Or so I thought. And then I realized that the plastic sheet had shifted in my, stamping tool. So I tried it again, and this time it did seem to work. So everything's lined up well, and I'm going to ink up all 3 stamps, and voila, even more detail. I realized that my ink pads are super juicy, so it's not drying very well, and they're kind of bleeding a tiny bit. But, if your ink pads are normal, this is just the first time I've used these ink pads. So they were super, super juicy, and there was a little bit of blurring, I guess you could say, not bleeding, blurring. So I'm flipping this cardstock again so I can stamp out the big bow, smaller bow, and the bell on the other side. And then the details, the outline and the details of the bell is the fourth layer, and I'm using just my Memento Tuxedo black ink, and you can see it really crisps everything up. It makes everything look really sharp and shiny. I think if I were to do this again, I would probably pick an even bigger gradient. I would pick the lightest color. I would go even lighter if I could. But I wanted this kind of silvery gray color tone for all of this because I'm going to be making some kind of more traditional looking cards, and I wanted that kind of traditional, kind of sophisticated color family to do this. So I'm doing the last of the fourth layer, and then this is the paper pad that I used. It's an old one, and I just thought that this music paper in the red was very pretty and festive. I think it's actually a paper pad that was designed for like Valentine's Day, but I mean, I don't read music, so maybe this music is, more Valentine's-y, but I thought it would look really pretty as the background for holiday cards. And I'm just using cream colored cardstock for the base. And then I'm just using some scraps from my scrap box. This was like a glittered plaid, and I just had a little bit left. So I thought just putting a band across the lower 1/3 of the card front would be pretty and coordinate really nicely with the silver bows. And I'm just using some double-sided dots here to raise the bows a little bit. I think even though this is a really quick, handmade card to make, I think for recipients, unless they're real crafters like all of us are, anything that adds a little dimension or a little bit of specialness to it really sets it apart from all of those, store-bought cards. I think adding this little bit of dimension really helps make this card extra special and lets the recipient know that you took the time to make them a handmade card and thought it through. So I thought I would just, layer on this big bow to the left, then add the little bow. And again, I'm putting a whole bunch of double-sided foam adhesive on the back of this little bow. I'm just going to position it up toward the middle. And then I'm going to do another couple of cards with this music paper. Again, this was just, I think, like a scrap that I had. It was just one sheet of music from, I think it had Deck the Halls on it. And again, more scrap paper. This is like a red and gray and white plaid. I think it's an old scrap from a Graphic 45 sheet that I had. And I just save up all my scraps to use them, when I can. I have a fairly good size scrap box. But I really enjoyed using up all these scraps for these cards. And I think it looks really pretty. The joy here is from Diemond Dies. It's from Holiday Words. I designed that set, gosh, a couple of years ago. And obviously the Altenew stamps were from Bells and Bows. And the background for this next card that I'm going to share is from In Love Art Shop. And that was the front. And this is the inside liner that I had done, gosh, probably a year ago. But I'll put links to all of the products that I used, if I can find them, in the description box below. And I just decided to use up this card base, I guess. And I had a little bit of satin blue ribbon. And I thought this would be perfect for somebody who maybe doesn't celebrate Christmas, but does Hanukkah. I think that blue and silver looks so pretty together, so classic. So I just glued down with some E6000. I was too lazy to get my hot glue gun out. And I tied some little blue bows with the satin ribbon as well. And I'm just adding that to the top of the bells. And so by doing 4 sets, I had 2 bells that I could put on each card. And again, I thought adding a little bit of dimension would make this extra special besides the dimension of the bows and the satin ribbon. So I'm adding double-sided foam adhesive to the back of these bells. And then I'm going to place that so that it looks like it's hanging from the top from these little satin strips. And that's the completed card. So I'm going to do one more card with the other 2 bows. And again, I'm just using up scraps in my scrap box. Red card base, green background, just for a little bit of green trim showing. And then for this card front, it's just white cardstock. And you see I'm putting on foam adhesive. And then I'm going to use some baker's twine. I thought this would be really pretty in terms of adding color and dimension. And I'm just going to snip that. And I'm using just regular Scotch tape because it's all going to be hidden on the back side of this card front as well as with the bells. And I'm just going to layer them on the card front so that it kind of is staggered, about 1/3 of the way down, about 2/3 of the way down. And then I'm adding more foam dots on the back side of this so that the whole card front is supported from the back. I'm taking off the release paper here. And I think this adds a nice extra dimension to this card as well. And I'm just making sure I have it centered there. And I'm going to add these bells to the bottoms of this baker's twine. It's a tri-colored baker's twine. I also tied little bows with them, with this as well. And I think it comes out looking so sweet. And I really think that the baker's twine adds a little extra oomph, to make it worth the trouble of making handmade cards as opposed to just buying boxed cards. And then again, I'm using this holiday words, joy. And this time I decided I wanted a little more dimension to match the dimension of the baker's twine. So I die cut this joy out 3 times, and I'm just using some wet glue to layer them, to stack the joy words together. So it gives a little more thickness. I think with about 3, it's about the same thickness as thickers are. And I think it really adds a substantial feeling to the word die cut. And I love this joy. It's so swirly and pretty and feminine and, I don't know, traditional looking to me. So I like that traditional look with these, holiday cards. I'm adding glue to the back of the base of this stacked joy. And this is the last of the completed cards. I think all of these came out so pretty, and I know the recipients are going to really appreciate the fact that I took the time to make handmade cards, even though in reality, I made 6 cards in probably 3 hours or less. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a wonderful holiday season. Thanks for watching, and I'll come on to share another few ideas for quick and easy holiday cards. I hope you guys are having a wonderful crafty day.